There is a Florence Scovel Shinn case from her work with clients in New York City in the early 1900s that has been quietly passed between serious manifestation students for almost 100 years. The case of a woman who arrived at Florence's office with nothing. No home, no money, no plan, no obvious way forward. And within 90 days had built the foundation that carried her into wealth she never thought possible. And the only thing she did differently from the thousands of other people in similar circumstances was speak one specific Florence Shinn affirmation. Every morning, every afternoon, every night, for 90 days, without missing a single day. Tonight I am going to give you that exact affirmation. The precise reason it works on people starting from absolute zero, and the protocol you can begin using tonight if you are in your own version of starting from nothing. So let us start with the premise, as stated in Joel 2:25. And I will restore to you the years that the locust hath eaten. Notice the exact wording of this verse. It does not say God might restore. It does not say if you deserve it, God will restore. It says, I will restore. This is a declaration from the Creator to the children of the Creator that whatever has been lost, whatever has been eaten, whatever has been stripped away in seasons of difficulty, that loss is not permanent. Restoration is the operating principle of the divine plan. And Florence Scovel Shinn built much of her work on this exact verse, that no person who has been brought low is meant to remain there. The divine right of restoration is operating for every single person who knows how to claim it. This is what I want to discuss with you today. Before I take you any further into this teaching, I want to give you something to hold on to. Because the affirmation you are about to learn carries more weight when you have already spoken it once. So say it with me right now. Even a whisper is enough. I claim my divine inheritance now. The plan is unfolding. My word is my wand. Say it again with me. I claim my divine inheritance now. The plan is unfolding. My word is my wand. And there it is. Did you feel it? That small recognition inside your body? That quiet drop into a different frequency? That is the consciousness Florence Shinn taught her clients to inhabit before any visible change in their circumstances could occur. And what you just felt is the same shift the woman in our case study felt the first time Florence taught her these words. That is your entry point into the consciousness of restoration. Before we go further, if those words moved something in you, scroll down to the comments below and write, I claim my divine inheritance. Every person who claims this tonight adds energy to the collective field, and your comment seals the speaking. And subscribe to this channel before you forget, because the next teaching is already being prepared, and it picks up exactly where this one ends. The rebuild does not stop at 90 days. It continues, and you want to be there when the next instruction arrives. So let me start here with the first piece. The actual structure of the case study and why it matters even though we do not know the woman by name. Because the case is not legend. Florence wrote about clients in this exact circumstance throughout her books, and the pattern she observed was consistent enough to be a teaching. A person arrives at the lowest possible point. No resources, no obvious path forward, often after years of decline. And they encounter the Florence Shinn principles for the first time. What Florence noticed was that people at this point have one specific advantage over people who are merely uncomfortable. The people at the lowest point have nothing left to protect. They cannot pretend their current strategy is working. They cannot maintain the illusion of partial success. The failure is total. And total failure breaks the ego in a way that comfortable failure never does. When the ego breaks, the resistance to the new identity dissolves, and the affirmation can land with no internal contradiction. This is why so many of Florence's most dramatic case studies came from people in absolute crisis. The crisis itself was the doorway. And let me give you something more specific about what the woman in this case study actually did during those first 30 days, because this is the practical part that almost nobody teaches. When she walked into Florence's office, she did not have a plan. She did not have a strategy. She had been pushing against her circumstances for years, and nothing had worked. What Florence gave her was permission to stop pushing. This is the first piece of the practical protocol. When you are starting from zero, you must release the chasing energy completely. Every action you take during the 90 days must come from the consciousness of claiming, not from the consciousness of desperation. The woman went home that first night, and Florence had instructed her to do 3 things and only 3 things. The first was to speak the affirmation upon waking before any other thought entered her mind. The second was to speak it at midday, standing still wherever she was. And the third was to speak it again as the last conscious thought before sleep. 3 times per day, no more elaborate ritual, no journaling, no candles, no specific posture, just the words placed precisely in those 3 windows. The simplicity of the protocol is what made it work, because complicated protocols give the mind something to perform, and performance is the opposite of consciousness. The second part of what she did was equally important. Every time she caught herself thinking about lack, every time she felt the contracted energy of worry begin to rise, she did not fight the thought. She did not try to push it away. She simply spoke the affirmation again, placing it as the dominant frequency over whatever lack thought had arisen. Florence called this the catching practice. You do not have to clean your mind of every limiting thought. You only have to keep speaking the new instruction until the new instruction becomes the dominant frequency. And the third part of what she did was to take whatever practical action presented itself without grasping for outcomes. She went to interviews when interviews were offered. She made phone calls when phone calls were needed. She said yes to small opportunities even when they did not seem to lead anywhere. But she did all of this from the consciousness that she had already claimed her divine inheritance. The action was not the cause of the rebuild. The consciousness was the cause. The action was simply the visible cooperation with what was already in motion. This distinction is everything, because most people in desperate circumstances either freeze in helpless inaction or scramble in frantic overaction. Both extremes block the law from operating. The middle path is calm cooperation, doing what is in front of you without attachment to whether each specific action produces the breakthrough. The breakthrough comes from the consciousness. The actions are simply the channels through which the breakthrough delivers itself into visible reality. And there is one more specific thing the woman did that Florence considered crucial. Every time she heard about someone else receiving wealth, getting an opportunity, having something good happen, she silently blessed them. She did not allow envy to take root. She did not allow comparison to form. She simply blessed the wealth of others as evidence that wealth was moving in the world, and as evidence that her own portion was equally available. This blessing practice keeps your magnetic field clean. It prevents the unconscious resentment that reverses your polarity. And over the 90 days, it becomes a habit so deep that you genuinely cannot envy another person's good fortune, because you understand that their good fortune does not affect your own divine right allocation. The second piece is why I claim my divine inheritance now beats every other wealth affirmation when you are starting from nothing. The word claim is doing specific work here. You do not claim something you are asking for. You do not claim something you hope might come to you. You claim something that already belongs to you. The act of claiming is a declaration of ownership, and ownership cannot be combined with begging. When you say, "I claim my divine inheritance now," you are stepping into the consciousness of someone who already possesses what they are speaking about. Your inheritance was set aside in the divine plan before you were born. It is not something you must earn through good behavior. It is not something you can lose through bad behavior. It is yours by inheritance. An inheritance is a legal and spiritual category that operates outside of merit. This is the key distinction Florence understood that almost nobody teaches today. You do not earn your way back from zero. You claim your way back. The third piece is what the plan is unfolding actually means in practical terms. Because the divine plan is often discussed as if it were a vague spiritual concept. But Florence Shinn taught it as a precise operating system. The divine plan is the blueprint of your life as it was designed before circumstances and choices and traumas began modifying it. The blueprint contains everything you were meant to receive, every opportunity you were meant to encounter, every relationship you were meant to form, every level of wealth you were meant to access. This blueprint does not disappear when life goes wrong. It does not get overwritten by your worst seasons. It is still there, underneath everything that has happened, waiting to be activated by your consciousness. When you say the plan is unfolding, you are declaring that the blueprint is currently being revealed in your visible reality. You are not asking for it to begin. You are acknowledging that it is already in motion. This shifts your consciousness from waiting to receiving, and receiving is the polarity that brings the visible evidence into form. The fourth piece is the 90-day arc, explained in detail. Because most people who try this kind of practice quit somewhere between day 12 and day 18. And the reason they quit is that they do not know what to expect at each stage. The first 7 days are characterized by strangeness. The affirmation feels foreign in your mouth. Your nervous system does not recognize the consciousness. You have to consciously remember to speak the words because the old habits have not yet been interrupted. The next 2 weeks, from day 8 to day 21, are the most dangerous period. This is when your mind starts demanding visible evidence. You have been speaking for 3 weeks and nothing has obviously changed. This is the point where most people decide it is not working and stop. But Florence taught that this period is exactly when the most important work is happening. The consciousness is integrating, but the visible world has not yet been instructed to respond. You must speak through this period on faith alone. From day 22 to day 45, something shifts. The affirmation no longer feels foreign. It has become familiar. You catch yourself saying it without conscious effort. The consciousness is beginning to stabilize, and small evidence begins to appear. A phone call you did not expect. An opportunity from someone you forgot about. A small windfall that does not yet change everything, but signals that the channels are opening. From day 45 to day 70, the evidence accelerates. The small openings become more frequent. The synchronicities become impossible to ignore. You are no longer wondering if it is working, you are watching it work. And from day 70 to day 90, the substantial outer change begins. This is when foundations are laid that will support significant wealth. Not always the wealth itself yet, but the structures that wealth will flow through. This is the arc that the woman in the case study walked. This is the arc you walk if you commit. Let me give you something even more specific about what divine inheritance actually contains, because most people hear the phrase and assume it means money will appear. But Florence Shinn taught that divine inheritance is much larger than money. It includes the people who were meant to know you, the opportunities that were meant to find you, the work you were meant to do, the relationships that were meant to nourish you, the wisdom that was meant to arrive in your life at precisely the moments you needed it. All of this is your inheritance. And when you claim your divine inheritance, you are not asking for one specific thing. You are opening the channels for the entire allocation to begin moving toward you. This is why the affirmation works so powerfully on people starting from absolute zero, because they typically need not just money, but a complete rebuild of every category of their life. And the divine inheritance affirmation activates restoration in every category simultaneously. You do not have to specify what you want restored. The divine plan knows what you need. You simply claim the entire allocation, and the channels open accordingly. And there is something important to understand about what happens during the periods when nothing visible seems to be changing, because this is where most people lose faith and stop the practice. When you speak the affirmation for 2 weeks, and your bank account still shows the same number, and your circumstances still look identical, your mind will produce a very compelling case that the practice is not working. This is the most important moment in the entire 90 days. What you cannot see during this period is that significant work is happening underneath the visible reality. Your subconscious is reorganizing the default operating frequency. Your consciousness is establishing new patterns. The field around you is realigning. But none of this shows up in the bank account yet, and the temptation is to interpret the lack of visible change as evidence of failure. But Florence taught that this period is exactly when the new foundation is being poured. And you cannot see the foundation when it is being poured. You can only see it later when the structure rises on top of it. The woman in our case study went through this period somewhere around day 15, and what she did was crucial. She did not stop speaking the affirmation. She did not decrease the frequency. She did not negotiate with herself about whether to keep going. She simply continued. Mechanically, if necessary, faithfully, if possible. And she trusted Florence's word that the work was happening even when she could not see it. This is the discipline that separates the people who manifest from the people who do not. The willingness to continue the practice through the period when nothing visible is changing. Because every time you continue through that period, you are demonstrating to your subconscious that the new identity is more real to you than the visible circumstances. And the subconscious receives that demonstration as a confirmation that it should continue the reorganization. The fifth piece is Florence Shinn's specific teaching on recovery from absolute zero. Because the rules are different when you are starting from nothing than when you are starting from comfortable struggle. When you have nothing, every conventional wisdom about wealth becomes inverted. Conventional wisdom says you must have capital to make capital. Florence taught the opposite, that the consciousness of having must be established before any visible capital arrives. Conventional wisdom says you must have credentials to access opportunity. Florence taught that opportunity flows to consciousness, not to credentials. Conventional wisdom says you must have connections to be considered. Florence taught that the divine plan creates connections for the consciousness that has aligned with it. None of this means that practical action stops. You still take the practical steps in front of you, but the practical steps work entirely differently when they are taken from the consciousness of divine inheritance rather than from the consciousness of desperate scarcity. This is why two people in identical circumstances can take identical actions and produce wildly different results. The underlying consciousness is the variable that determines the outcome. The sixth piece is the contrarian truth that the lowest point is often the most powerful starting position. And I want to be very direct here because almost nobody teaches this. When you have something to lose, the law of attraction operates more slowly because the existing consciousness has more mass, more momentum, more anchored beliefs about how reality works. When you have nothing to lose, the existing consciousness is light. Your nervous system is open. Your beliefs about reality have already been broken by circumstance. This means the new consciousness can be installed with less resistance. The affirmation can land with less internal contradiction. The shift can happen faster. This is why Florence's most dramatic case studies often came from people who appeared to have the least. They did not have less working in their favor. They had less working against them. The existing belief structure had already collapsed, and that collapse was the doorway. Here is the whole picture. You are not in the position of starting from zero because you have failed. You are in this position because the divine plan often clears the foundation before it rebuilds it. The years the locust hath eaten were not punishment. They were preparation. The consciousness that emerges from total loss is the consciousness that can hold significant wealth without being corrupted by it. This is why the affirmation we are discussing tonight works so powerfully on people starting from absolute bottom. The bottom is the foundation, and the foundation is the beginning of the rebuild. Before we close, I want to give you something to take with you. The woman in this case study did not have anything you do not have. She had Florence Shinn's affirmation. She had 90 days, and she had the willingness to speak the words even when nothing seemed to be moving. You have all three of those right now in this moment. The affirmation has been given to you. The 90-day window starts tomorrow morning if you commit. And the willingness is a choice you make in this exact moment as you finish this video. The rest is timing. And timing belongs to the divine plan, not to you. So speak the affirmation with me one more time before you go. I claim my divine inheritance now. The plan is unfolding. My word is my wand. Hold that. And tomorrow morning when you wake up, speak it again. And every morning after that for 90 days, no exceptions. And somewhere inside that window, the locust years begin reversing, and what was lost begins returning, sometimes multiplied beyond what was originally taken. That is the operating principle of the divine plan. And tonight, you have been given the key.